He was once the Lion of Las Vegas, the velvet-voiced icon who made women swoon and arenas tremble. But now, at over 80, Tom Jones lives a life far removed from the spotlight that once burned so brightly. The voice still echoes, but the world around him has grown quieter, lonelier. Behind the fame, behind the knighthood, lies a man carrying decades of heartbreak, fading health, and memories too heavy to forget. What happens when the legend outlives the myth? This is the untold story of Sir Tom Jones, his rise, his regrets, and the quiet sadness of how he lives today. A voice born in the valleys. He was born in the foggy hills of Pontypridd, South Wales, in 1940, a working-class boy named Thomas John Woodward. His father worked down in the coal mines, a job that blackened the lungs and broke the backs of most Welshmen. It was a tough place, a town full of men who carried their pain in silence and women who held families together with grit and grace. That was the world Tom came from. No silver spoons, no stage lights, just soot, sweat, and survival. At just 12 years old, young Tom was struck by a severe case of tuberculosis. The disease confined him to his bed for nearly 2 years. 2 years of silence, isolation, and uncertainty. It was the loneliest time of my life, he later said. But in that long, still darkness, something sparked. Music became his lifeline. He'd listen for hours to the radio, letting the voices of Mahalia Jackson, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley pour through the static and into his soul. While his body was healing, his voice was forming. When he finally recovered, it was as if he had emerged from the ashes with a sound that didn't belong in that small town. It was deep, raw, thunderous, like nothing anyone in Pontypridd had ever heard. He started performing under the name Tommy Scott at local pubs and dance halls, barely paid, but deeply driven. He didn't know where it would take him. All he knew was that the music felt like purpose. And so, the boy who once lay bedridden and forgotten was now rising, note by note, towards something far greater than anyone could have imagined. What started in a coal town would soon echo around the world. Meteoric rise to stardom. It didn't take long before fate opened its first big door. One night in the early 60s, talent manager Gordon Mills saw Tom perform in a pub. What he saw wasn't just talent, it was raw electricity. Mills took him under his wing, gave him a new name, Tom Jones, after the hit movie of the same era, and rebranded him for the world stage. Then came the storm. In 1965, It's Not Unusual was released. No one was ready. The song hit the airwaves like a lightning strike, launching straight to #1 in the UK and making waves across the Atlantic. With his brassy baritone and passionate delivery, Tom didn't just sing, he roared. He wasn't polished like Sinatra or soft like the Beatles. He was wild, intense, impossible to ignore. America fell in love with him. He appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, and suddenly the Welshman with the booming voice was at the heart of the British invasion. He toured endlessly, filling theaters, arenas, and eventually, stadiums. And then, he took it a step further. He got his own TV show. This Is Tom Jones ran from 1969 to 1971 and turned him into a household name. He was no longer just a singer, he was a star. Every week, millions tuned in to see him perform with guests like Stevie Wonder, Janis Joplin, and Aretha Franklin. And every week, Tom held his own. He once said, "I didn't know how to be famous, I just knew how to sing." And sing he did. with more fire and force than most artists dared. But fame is never just about the music. The higher he soared, the more complicated life would become. The Vegas years and global fame. By the early 1970s, Tom Jones was the heartbeat of Las Vegas. Night after night, he ruled the stage at Caesar's Palace and the Flamingo, packing the house with performances that were part concert, part spectacle. Women threw undergarments. Men cheered. Celebrities lined up just to get a glimpse of him in action. It was said that even Elvis Presley, the king himself, would slip into the crowd to watch. He had a bigger voice than all of us, Elvis once reportedly told friends, and he knew how to use it. Their mutual respect became a quiet friendship, one forged backstage, away from the flashes. Tom's hits kept rolling in. Delilah, what's new Pussycat? She's a lady. Each one carried that signature power, half seduction, half storm. He made millions. He wore diamonds. He flew private. He lived in mansions from Los Angeles to London. And in Vegas, he was worshipped. But with success came temptation. The lifestyle was excessive. Affairs, alcohol, and the emotional toll of constant travel began to wear on him. The public still saw the legend in leather pants, commanding the stage. But behind the scenes, Tom was beginning to feel the cost of his image. "I was burning the candle at both ends," he would later admit, "and somewhere in the middle, I lost myself." Still, the world wasn't done with Tom Jones, not even close. As his fame peaked, another part of his life, one far more fragile, was quietly unraveling. Personal life, love, and turmoil. Long before the stages and the spotlight, there was Linda. They were childhood sweethearts, married young when she became pregnant at just 16. By the time Tom was touring America, Linda was raising their son, Mark, back in Wales, alone, in the shadows of her husband's rising star. Their marriage was one of contrasts, deep devotion laced with betrayal. Tom openly admitted to his affairs, estimating hundreds of women during the height of his fame. "I never tried to lie to her," he said in later years. "She always knew. She just chose not to leave." Linda, reclusive and intensely private, suffered from agoraphobia. She rarely left the house. She didn't attend red carpet events or travel with Tom. But she stayed. Through decades of gossip, infidelity, and separation, she remained his anchor, his constant. "He could break my heart," she reportedly once said, "but he could never make me stop loving him." It was a marriage few understood, and many judged, but it endured. Beneath the glamour, there was a bond formed long before the world knew his name. And in the silence of their shared home, away from the fans and flashing lights, there was something real, wounded, but unbreakable. And then, heartbreak came for real. The pain of loss. In 2016, Linda passed away after a short but devastating battle with cancer. Her death shattered Tom in a way that nothing else ever had. After nearly 6 decades together, through all the fame, flaws, and forgiveness, she was gone. And the man who had stood tall on the world's biggest stages suddenly seemed small, human, broken. He canceled his tour immediately. He didn't perform for months. "I didn't think I could sing again," he later said. She was everything. Tom sold their Los Angeles mansion and moved back to the UK, as Linda had asked him to do before she died. He keeps her ashes in an urn beside his bed, a symbol of a love that lasted longer than most can comprehend. He said that he speaks to her still, before shows, before sleep, in the quiet. It's not just grief. It's presence. Even in death, Linda remains the thread that holds him together. The loneliness that followed was sharp and constant. The man once surrounded by adoring fans now spent nights in solitude. His voice, still powerful, now carried a weight it never had before. And though the world remembers the legend, the icon, the booming voice, Tom Jones remembers the girl from Wales who loved him before any of it mattered. Health struggles and aging. Getting older is a quiet battle, one that creeps in slowly, then all at once. For Tom Jones, now in his 80s, the wear and tear of a life lived on stage is impossible to ignore. Though his voice remains a thunderous force, his body has begun to betray him. In recent years, Tom underwent a hip replacement surgery that temporarily grounded his performances and changed the way he moved on stage. He's also battled painful back problems that require him to use inversion therapy, a technique where he hangs upside down to relieve pressure on his spine. Even this, he approaches with his signature grit. "You've got to keep your body going," he told one interviewer. "The voice might still be there, but if the body gives out, you're done." In 2022, a sudden urinary tract infection forced him to cancel several shows on his European tour, igniting headlines that questioned his ability to continue. But Tom insisted it wasn't the end, just a setback. He bounced back, but not without visible effort. The suit fits a little looser. The dance steps come slower. Still, when he walks out under the lights, that unmistakable voice fills the room and silence turns to awe. He once joked, "You don't think about being 80 until you're 80." And now, that reality shapes every part of his day, from diet to sleep to the pace at which he lives. No more wild parties, no late-night escapades, just music, rest, and the quiet ache of time catching up. And yet, even as age pushes in, Tom refuses to fade away. His presence on stage is no longer just performance, it's defiance. But behind the curtain, in the moments when the crowds are gone, life looks very different. A life in solitude. Gone are the roaring crowds of Vegas. Gone are the lavish parties, the after-show madness, the endless buzz of fame. Today, Tom Jones lives alone in a London apartment. Simple, quiet, reflective. It's a stark contrast to the life he once led. And in that stillness, the past echoes loudly. After Linda's passing, he withdrew from much of public life. While he still performs on occasion, the majority of his time is spent in solitude. He reads, he listens to music, he thinks. There are no longer dozens of people in his entourage, just a skeleton crew and his own company. For a man who once had the world at his feet, the silence can be deafening. He has said in interviews that he still talks to his wife, especially when he feels alone. "She's still here, in a way," he said, and in many ways, she is. Her presence lingers in the corners of his home, in the songs he chooses to sing, in the way he carries himself now, more quietly, more deliberately. Loneliness is a companion he never expected to keep. But as the years press on, Tom has learned to coexist with it. He doesn't crave attention the way he once did. He doesn't need the applause to feel alive. These days, it's the memories that keep him going. And yet, even in solitude, family still casts a long, complicated shadow. Family ties and estrangements. Tom's relationship with his son Mark has always been stable, though more business than bonding. Mark has managed Tom's career for decades, keeping the ship afloat even as the singer entered his later years. There's trust between them, but not always closeness. Tom has said little about their private life, choosing instead to focus on their professional partnership. But family, for Tom, is a word that carries both pride and pain. In 1987, during a short-lived affair, Tom fathered a son, Jonathan Berkery. The child, born out of scandal, was never truly acknowledged by Tom, despite a DNA test confirming paternity. Over the years, Jonathan has struggled publicly, facing homelessness and battling addiction. He's spoken to the press more than once, not out of malice, but out of yearning. "I don't want his money," Jonathan once said. "I just want to meet him." Tom has remained mostly silent on the issue. When pressed, he once said, "It wasn't something I planned. It was just a mistake." But to Jonathan, it was more than a mistake. It was a door that never opened. The world watched as the estranged son pleaded for recognition, while the father, wrapped in silence, stood unmoved. It's one of the few areas where Tom Jones, the icon, is visibly flawed. Family ties can be messy, and for a man whose life has been lived under a microscope, the absence of reconciliation remains a painful chapter. Still, even as the family tree shows broken branches, Tom continues forward, wealthy, successful, but not without regrets. Financial fortunes and missteps. Tom Jones has made millions. That's undeniable. From record-breaking album sales to decades of sold-out shows, his career has been a masterclass in longevity. But even with all that success, the path hasn't always been smooth. During his Vegas reign, Tom earned sums most singers only dream of. He bought mansions, traveled on private jets, and lived like royalty. But money, like fame, comes and goes, especially when there are missteps behind the scenes. Over the years, Tom faced legal disputes over royalties and management deals that didn't always work in his favor. Some business ventures, real estate, brand partnerships, never quite landed. In the early 2000s, he quietly sold several properties and downsized, even as his music career surged again. It wasn't a fall from wealth, but a shift in lifestyle. Less flash, more focus. These days, he earns comfortably from royalties and selective performances. But the lifestyle is simpler now. There's no longer a need to chase excess. "I've had money, and I've been without," he once said. The trick is not letting it own you. That wisdom came with age and mistakes. And through it all, he's never filed for bankruptcy or made headlines for lavish spending. Instead, he weathered financial storms the way he handled everything else. Head down, eyes forward. And yet, even success can feel hollow when the applause fades. So what remains when the money's counted and the stage lights dim? The answer lies in what the world remembers. Legacy and honors. For a man who came from the coal valleys of Wales, Tom Jones has achieved more than most ever will. In 2006, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, Sir Tom Jones, a title that marked not just fame, but cultural significance. It was a full-circle moment for the boy who once sang in working men's clubs and dreamed of more. He's won Grammy Awards, Brit Awards, and countless other accolades. His voice has filled stadiums, television screens, and living rooms for 6 decades. He's performed for presidents and queens, collaborated with legends, and influenced generations. And even today, young artists cite him as an inspiration. But his legacy isn't just in awards. It's in the emotion he brings to every note. It's in the way his songs still make people cry, dance, feel. "A great voice is a gift," he once said, "but what you do with it, that's your legacy." His music has stood the test of time. From bombastic showstoppers to soulful ballads, Tom's catalog is vast and timeless. Younger fans discover his work through streaming, and older ones return to it like an old friend. As he walks through his 80s, the honors may slow down, but the legacy only grows. Because when the curtain finally falls, it won't be the scandals or the headlines people remember. It will be the voice that started in a sickbed in Wales and rose to conquer the world. And from that legacy, the story continues. More tender now, more reflective, but far from over. Controversies and public perception. For all his talent and triumphs, Tom Jones has never lived without controversy. Fame, after all, is a double-edged sword, and for someone as visible and as volatile as Tom, scrutiny was never far behind. While millions admired his voice and charisma, others questioned the choices that shadowed his personal life. Throughout his career, Tom's extramarital affairs were more than whispers. He acknowledged them openly, sometimes even joking about them in interviews. But over time, the candid confessions lost their charm for some. Critics pointed to his infidelities as a betrayal of the loyal wife, who stood quietly behind the curtain for decades. To many, Linda was the silent hero in his story, and his cavalier attitude didn't always sit well. Then came the headlines about Jonathan Berkery, his illegitimate son, who struggled through homelessness, addiction, and rejection. The tabloids latched on, and public sympathy began to lean toward the son, longing for a father's love. He could fix it all with one phone call, Jonathan once said, but that call never came. Tom's silence only added weight to the controversy. Even on stage, he hasn't been immune to criticism. A few song choices over the years, particularly lyrics seen as outdated or sexist, led to uncomfortable conversations in a modern age. In 2022, one of his older hits, Delilah, was banned from being sung at Welsh rugby matches due to concerns about its violent themes. Though Tom defended the song as storytelling, not advocacy, the world around him had changed. Still, he endured. Because for every critique, there's admiration. For every scandal, a redemption. Public opinion remains mixed, but always fascinated. "You either live loud or live safe," Tom once said. "I never chose the quiet road." And as the years go on, the conversation about his legacy continues. Messy, yes, but unforgettable. Musical evolution and experimentation. Tom Jones could have stayed in the lane that made him famous. He could have kept churning out retro hits and living in the past, but he didn't. Instead, as the decades unfolded, he chose reinvention over and over again. In his later years, Tom began recording music that no one expected. Gone were the flashy horns and velvet suits. In their place were stripped-down, soulful arrangements, gritty, intimate, haunting. In 2010, he released Praise and Blame, an album of gospel and blues covers that stunned critics. Gone was the showman. What remained was the soul. "It was the kind of album I always wanted to make," Tom said. "No gimmicks, just me." That bold departure earned him new respect. Younger artists began to seek him out, not just as a legend, but as a peer. He collaborated with Jack White, Wyclef Jean, and even performed alongside contemporary stars on The Voice. Each new album felt like a chapter in an evolving autobiography. Then came Surrounded by Time in 2021, a deeply personal record that confronted aging, death, and memory. At 80, Tom wasn't trying to hold on to youth. He was exploring what it meant to grow old with grace. His voice, now textured and heavy with life, didn't hide the years. It embraced them. "Music has to mean something to me," he explained. "I've lived too much to sing songs that don't speak truth." That honesty, raw, unfiltered, became his new trademark. And in letting go of the image, he found something even stronger: authenticity. Mentorship and television presence. Just when the world thought Tom Jones might quietly fade from the stage, he surprised everyone. Again. In 2012, he joined The Voice UK as a coach, stepping into a new role: mentor. For an entire generation too young to know it's not unusual, this was their introduction to the man behind the myth. And Tom didn't disappoint. With his signature warmth, deep well of experience, that unmistakable voice, he quickly became a favorite. Contestants were moved to tears just by having him listen. Viewers watched as he offered quiet wisdom, shared stories about Elvis and Aretha, and proved that talent doesn't age, it evolves. "There's a difference between a singer and an artist," he once told a contestant. "Don't just hit the notes, tell your story." But it wasn't always smooth sailing. In 2015, he was unceremoniously dropped from the show, an executive decision that led to public backlash. Fans rallied behind him, outraged that such an icon had been dismissed so easily. The network eventually brought him back, and when he returned, it was with more gravitas than ever. He didn't need the show. The show needed him. Through The Voice, Tom redefined what it means to age in the music industry. He wasn't clinging to relevance. He was embodying it. Young artists didn't just see him as a coach. They saw him as a symbol of survival, reinvention, and enduring power. And once again, Tom found a way to belong in a new era, without ever letting go of the old. Resilience amidst adversity. Life didn't spare Tom Jones from hardship. It merely gave him a stage to endure it on. And endure he did, with a quiet strength that has come to define his final act. He's faced career slumps, family fractures, the slow ache of aging, and the unbearable grief of losing the woman he loved most. Most men might have disappeared under that kind of weight. Tom kept singing, not because he had to, but because it was the only thing that still made sense. In recent years, as his peers passed away, Elvis, Sinatra, Tina Turner, Tom remained. Not untouched, but undefeated. There's a grit to him now, tempered by loss, but still alive. He doesn't pretend things are easy. He doesn't wear his smile like armor. But when he takes the stage, even now, there's something in his voice that defies time. "You carry your pain with you," he said. "It doesn't go away, but you sing through it. That's how you survive." Fans who attend his concerts these days don't come for the old hits. They come for the honesty. They come for the sight of a man who's lived through fire and still knows how to find the melody. That's resilience, not just the ability to stand, but to stand tall, even after everything falls. Reflection and the road ahead. These days, Tom Jones doesn't look to the future with the same hunger he once did. There's less to chase and more to understand. At over 80, he lives in reflection of a life lived loudly, imperfectly, and unforgettably. In interviews, he speaks with tenderness now about Linda, about loss, about what he wants to leave behind. "I want people to remember the songs," he said, "not the scandals, not the stories, just the sound." He performs less often now, choosing quality over quantity. Each show is a kind of farewell, though he never calls it that. Fans know they're witnessing something rare, not just a performance, but a living piece of music history saying goodbye in slow motion. He finds peace in smaller things: books, quiet walks, phone calls with old friends. And when he sings now, it's not for fame. It's to stay connected. To her, to himself, to the people who still listen. His road is shorter now, but it still stretches forward. And whether it ends in 5 years or 10, Tom Jones will walk it with grace, with depth, and with that voice, full of heartbreak and hope, thunder and soul. He was once the boy from Wales who sang his way out of a sickbed. Now, he's the man who sings through sorrow, the legend who stayed standing, the knight who never took off his armor. And when he is gone, the silence will echo with one unmistakable truth: the voice never left us. Once the loudest voice in the room, Tom Jones now sings softer, with more soul, more sorrow, and a lifetime of stories behind every note. His legend remains, but the life he lives today is far from glamorous. Sometimes, even icons fade, not in silence, but in solitude.